The best of Money Matters. The Big Story.
Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Hong Bin Jung. Billionaire Tesla chief executive Elon Musk is leaving the Trump administration after a tumultuous period working to restructure the federal government. Now, in a post on his social media platform X, the world's richest man thanked Trump for the opportunity to help run the Department of Government Efficiency, known as DOGE. Now, his role was temporary and his exit is not unexpected, but it comes a day after Musk criticized the legislative centerpiece of Trump's agenda. Did his criticism of Trump have anything to do with his departure? And what's next for DOGE as Elon Musk steps back? Well, joining us today to share more is Kevin Chen, Associate Research Fellow with the U.S. program at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at the Nanyang Technological University. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Kevin, the White House began offboarding Musk as a special government employee on Wednesday night. Now, the departure is said to be a decision the tech entrepreneur made on his own with the support of the president. Did this decision surprise you? What do you think prompted the offboarding of Musk from the White House?
Well, in truth, no, it didn't really surprise me. We've known for a few weeks now that Trump had cooled on Musk following the Wisconsin Supreme Court election where, if you recall, the conservative candidate, Brett Schimmel, lost to his liberal opponent, Susan Crawford, by 10 points, even though Musk was vocally supporting Schimmel in his campaign. Things haven't quite been the same since then. Trump has kind of dropped references to Musk, and prior to that, he was praising him profusely in fundraising emails, for example. When South African President Cyril Ramaphosa visited the White House in April, Musk was present at the meeting as well, but kind of uncharacteristically, he was very silent. This is a pretty far cry from the prominent role he was given at Trump's first cabinet meeting back in February. And granted, there were some poll factors, including how badly Tesla is doing. Its profits, for example, collapsed 71% year on year in the first quarter of 2025, at least. But I think the biggest factor that prompted Musk's offboarding is his declining popularity, as laid bare by the Wisconsin election outcome and its aftermath.
Well, you mentioned his declining popularity there. What has been the general public response to his departure from the White House then?
Now, see, that's quite interesting. From what I've seen, the general public response right now, it's been a little muted.
Okay.
His departure, it comes amid quite a few other bigger news stories, like mentioned just now during the news flash, like how the U.S. Court of International Trade ruled that Trump had exceeded his authority and demanded that he remove almost all tariffs within 10 days. By comparison, Musk's departure, it just seemed to confirm what people have been expecting since he joined the Trump team, that he would eventually be. That said, probably not going to be very many tears shed for Musk anyway. His declining popularity is really something to behold. There was polling done by ABC News, the Washington Post, and Ipsos back in April that found that only 35% of respondents approved of Musk's job performance at DOGE. Most people polled thought that he went too far in laying off federal workers. Another poll suggests that Americans view Musk less favorably than Trump himself. So really, he's not winning any popularity contest nowadays.
Right. The decision was reportedly Musk's, made with the support of President Trump. And this, of course, came just a day after Musk sharply criticized the administration's tax and budget bill, calling it too expensive and counterproductive. Could you tell us, more about the remark he had made?
Sure. The bill in question, which Trump called his big, beautiful bill, it extends a series of tax cuts that were passed during Trump's first administration back in 2017. It also calls for more things like more defense spending, more spending on the border. However, the Congressional Budget Office, they warned that this big, beautiful bill would add trillions of dollars to U.S. debt over the next 10 years and increase the budget deficit by about $600 billion alone in the next fiscal year. Now, this appears to be Musk's main source of disappointment with the bill, that it might undo the work that his DOGE team has undertaken. I don't really think it had anything to do, it helped to precipitate his departure. I think it's more like he knew that he was on the way out and he could vent his frustrations on the air.
Right. Well, then, now looking at this further, do you think that this was a mutual parting, or was the president's support more about saving face after public fallout?
I suspect it was a mutual parting. So ever since that Wisconsin election that I keep mentioning, Musk has been noticeably absent from his usual activities on Twitter, X. And I suspect that he's also feeling a bit upset at the criticism that DOGE has received over the past few months. In that same interview where he criticized the administration's bill, he also complained about DOGE becoming the whipping boy for everything.
Right.
Coupled with poll factors, like how badly Tesla is doing, there are plenty of reasons for him to step back from his government role. And on Trump's part, the Wisconsin election outcome likely proved that Musk's political influence has its limits. In fact, given the developments surrounding DOGE's cuts, Musk's presence was probably more of a liability than a benefit to the image of the Trump administration at this stage.
I mean, some White House officials, including Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, they were angered by the remarks Musk had made. Do you think there were any, internal pressure that ultimately forced Musk out of the White House?
Perhaps, but I think it's more like it's easier to say that he doesn't have many allies within the White House. The peak of Musk's power in the White House was probably during Trump's first cabinet meeting on February 26, where Musk was standing right at the door while everyone else was seated. He wasn't an official, member of the cabinet, but he had such a commanding presence in the room. Yet in the interim, in the months since then, Musk has clashed with several of Trump's top cabinet officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. The latter incident was described as a heated shouting match by Axios. While Musk may have been close to Trump, his relationships with other Trump allies were not as rosy. As he departs, I don't think many tears will be shed for him within the White House as well. And, was there any internal pressure that facilitated that exit? Perhaps.
Well, now looking back at Musk's time in DOGE, Musk claimed to have helped cut nearly 12% of the federal workforce, which is over 260,000 jobs here. He has also targeted pandemic-era telework policies, citing them as a privilege that should end. How did these decisions resonate with the government? Were these changes actually welcomed or resented?
See, the thing is, most people acknowledge that there is plenty of wastage within the American government that should have been addressed sometimes years ago. Outdated systems, too many systems to process claims or manage information. There are plenty of examples. The issue with DOGE and Musk is that he accidentally cut vital programs in the process of doing some legitimate cuts. And these programs, like I said, they were vital. Things like under USAID, that were aimed to contain the spread of the Ebola virus, support HIV treatments within America, not to mention the laying off of all those thousands of government employees and the uncertainty and frustration it created. 260,000 jobs, it doesn't just affect the people who are laid off, but their families as well. As one pundit put it, Musk was performing brain surgery with a sledgehammer. I quite like that turn of phrase. Overall, the very haphazard way these cuts were implemented, they just caused a lot of harm.
Well, you did mention earlier in our conversation that there will be no tears shed for Musk over at the White House. I mean, during his tenure, Musk had clashed with major cabinet members and even called one advisor a so-called moron and dumber than a sand of bricks. So how damaging do you think these insults were for his ability to operate and cooperate within the administration?
That remark, I believe, was directed at Peter Navarro, Trump's economic advisor. Like I mentioned earlier, Musk has clashed with quite a few of Trump's team, and these run-ins likely were pretty damaging towards his ability to cooperate within the administration. But when it comes to operating in general, I think not so much. As long as Trump was fine with Musk, his place within the White House was assured, because no one wanted to run afoul of Musk and then Trump back him up and leave them isolated. Now, that being said, though, there was a point of time from, I believe, March onwards where Trump started to put some limits on Musk as well, such as when Trump stood up for Secretary Rubio, when Musk was criticizing the secretary for not cutting more members of the State Department. It suggests that Trump was already beginning to hedge his bets back in March 2025, probably a little mindful that DOGE's cuts were beginning to show up on popularity polls and have an effect.
Well, despite this controversy, Kevin, Musk was given broad power as a private citizen to restructure some parts of the government. Why do you think the White House still took that risk? Do you think it was worth it?
Well, I think it's because at the time, the White House saw a lot of overlap between what Musk wanted to do with the government, that is to downsize the cut, to remove excess like he's dealing with, any other tech firm that he's managed, and what the Trump administration wanted, that is to dismantle the civil service, the deep state, so to speak, that had hindered his policies during his first term. And of course, there's also the need to kind of reward Musk for his very strong support for Trump during the 2024 election campaign. Now, as to whether this was worth it, I think Musk served this purpose for Trump and his team. While plenty of DOGE cuts were unpopular, Musk's prominent public persona meant that he became a lightning rod for any discontent, as opposed to Trump himself or any other member of his administration. So in a way, yes, it was a worthwhile experiment, given that, a lot of the discontent was concentrated on Musk, and now the work can continue without him.
Speaking of DOGE and the work that is going to continue without him, the administration did emphasize that DOGE will continue with its mission. Can DOGE really survive without Musk at the helm? I mean, wasn't so much of it built around his personality and brand?
Sure, I'm pretty certain that DOGE will survive even without Musk. It was built on his brand, yes, I agree, but that brand became toxic when all those mistakes emerged and longtime civil servants lost their jobs. With Musk out of the picture, it's possible for the agency to be rebranded under Russell Vought, the head of the Office of Management and Budget and the official who's said to be the new head of DOGE.
Well, Musk has said he'll now scale back his political involvement and spend less on campaign donations. And at the same time, there has also been increasing criticism from Tesla investors about Musk being too distracted by politics. It also seems that Tesla investors look at this news as good news for Elon Musk from leaving the White House. Do you think this move is a sign that he's stepping out of politics for good? And could this departure help him refocus? And what does Wall Street see it that way?
Well, the thing is, I don't think we've seen the last of Musk in politics. The rebuke of the election loss in Wisconsin, it still stings probably, especially since he openly campaigned for the conservative candidate. He wore a cheese hat on stage trying to repeal the Wisconsinites. He contributed millions of dollars out of his own pocket to the campaign. But at the same time, despite this sting of the sting of the loss, Musk has also pretty decisively thrown in his lot with the Republican Party and conservatives around the globe, judging by gestures like his outspoken support for AfD in Germany. That's not going to go away overnight. It might go dormant as he kind of licks his wounds and figures out what he wants to do next, but I suspect he will come back in, perhaps around the time of the midterms. Now, as for whether this departure will help him to refocus his energies on Tesla in the meantime, frankly, I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to tell.
Okay. Well, but based on your observations here, Kevin, what has he accomplished during his time at the White House? Did he leave any lasting impact?
Oh, Musk has definitely left a lasting impact. It's just not in terms of money saved. So Musk initially promised to save $2 trillion. Then he cut that promise to $1 trillion. And now recently, I believe he's declared that he achieved $175 billion in cuts. Now, if you believe the BBC investigation into how much DOGE actually saved, the real figure is probably closer to $32 billion. Not very much as compared to his overall initial promise. Yet despite this, Musk has managed to leave a huge imprint on the federal government's infrastructure. Like you mentioned earlier, over 260,000 public sector employees pushed out or soon to leave their jobs. That's about 20%, I believe, of the federal government workforce. The hardest hit departments were Veterans Affairs, the Department of Health and Human Services, USAID, the list goes on. And not to mention the contracts and subsidies that were cut as a direct consequence. Each and every one of these cuts, every one of these vanquished agencies, they are going to have probably a very significant impact on the well-being of the American people. We are only beginning to understand how these cuts, how big these impacts are going to be. But for us here in Southeast Asia, the loss of USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, it removes a major source of financial support for NGOs that do work from, say, demining leftover munitions in Vietnam to refugee support on the Myanmar border. And it remains to be seen whether these NGOs can find alternative sources of financing or they have to shut down altogether.
Well, then what is the immediate impact now that we can see within Trump's administration following this change?
Frankly, not very much, I think, in terms of immediate impact, because the Trump administration, they've got a lot of other issues to tackle. Just last week, there was a whole thing about the brewing scandal in the Department of Defense over illegal wiretapping. And then recently, just earlier today, in fact, the recent ruling by the U.S. Court of International Trade that blocks Trump's sweeping tariffs. There's just so much going on within the White House and around it that I think Musk departure, it probably fades a little bit into the background.
All right. And finally, before we let you go here, Kevin, is there a possibility that President Trump will bring in someone new to replace Elon Musk?
I suppose that depends on what you mean by a replacement. So at DOGE, we've already seen a replacement for Musk in the form of OMB Director Vogt, who may be a more quietly effective DOGE leader given his experience in the civil service.
Right.
There are plenty of tech moguls who have been seen around Trump as well, like, for example, Sam Altman from OpenAI. He's a known rival to Musk when it comes to their AI platforms. And with Musk out of the picture, he might try to get closer to Trump. But arguably, I think when it comes to Musk's sheer presence, his force of personality, it's going to be difficult to find someone to fill his shoes, especially since they might end up stepping on Trump's toes.
Right.
It's going to be, Musk and Trump had a very interesting relationship that was cultivated during the election campaign last year. And now, without that kind of nurturing scenario, I don't really see a full-on substitute for Elon Musk coming about.
Right. So you don't see that relationship, that close relationship with Elon Musk and Trump continuing?
I don't think it will be as close, but I don't think the relationship has been completely severed either. Maybe give it a few months and then we'll have to see what happens.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for your time and your insights today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. That was Kevin Chen, Associate Research Fellow with the U.S. program at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at the Nanyang Technological University. This has been The Big Story with me, Hongbin Jeong.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.